Hey folks, Maine Prepper. I wanted to talk today, switch over to another subject because it's somewhat important. May not be entirely in sequence with what we've been talking about lately, but I think it is relevant. And that is, after we've done our assessments of our property and of the area we're hoping to move to, or perhaps the area that we're already in, we next want to go back and look at defending ourselves against prevalent threats. Now, these threats can be in the form of kinetic threats, that is, people that will actually shoot at you or try to do you physical harm on purpose, including robbing you. These can also be non-kinetic threats or just natural threats, such as hurricanes, tornadoes, and economic threats, losing your job, etc. Today, though, I want to talk about kinetic threats. I want to talk about specifically the types of people that you're going to hopefully not, but probably encounter during a WROL situation. One thing to keep in mind is that desperate people do desperate things. This is not to excuse bad behavior, rather it's to acknowledge a reality in the human psyche. I remember in SEER school we had opportunity to be put through a position where we had no food for days. And after a couple of days you're hungry and you're miserable and you start to get weak. But after about 3 days and onward, and especially when you get close to a week with no food, you will start to do things you didn't think that you would do in order to get food. And you'll see people's true colors come out. Some people will work harder and plan and be industrious. Some people will just flat give up. I mean, they just don't care anymore. Other people will resort to stealing, and they will rationalize their theft. And most of us wound up eating things we thought we would not eat. And that was the whole point of the exercise. It was to teach you several things about yourself. And so I'm glad to say that through it all I didn't steal, although I was tempted. But when you thought, well, who am I stealing from? I'm stealing from my friends, and they're just as hard up as I am. And I didn't cheat on there. And we were fortunate. We found some wild onions growing, and we ate so many of those our stomachs were sick, just upset. But back to the subject at hand. Let's talk about prevalent threats. We're going to talk about 3 threats, and it'll be broken down over 3 videos because I want to discuss some of the nuances that exist with each one. So I'm going to start with the threat that is most common and prevalent to me up where I am. And from that, I hope you can gain some information, even if this isn't going to be for you. I live in a remote area, a rural area, an area that is semi-populated. There's not many people per square mile up there, obviously. Mostly farmland, but also a lot of just a lot of wilderness, a lot of trees, and thus it's a popular place for hunters. And I'm not anti-hunting at all. Hunting is good, especially if it's done sensibly. That being said, not everybody that's a hunter is some noble NRA, member type individual that you necessarily want over for supper. Some of them are really good people. Most of them are just average people, and then some of them are just plain trash. I mean, you don't want them around your families. I lived near a national forest for years, and around hunting season every year it was a real problem because we would have to go out, like to go to church or to go to the grocery store or anything else, and you would see these guys that come in their camis, their camouflage stuff, their mossy pattern, real tree oak nonsense, and that's okay. I mean, dress however you want to. I don't care. Just cover up the indecent parts. The problem, though, was their attitude. They had a kind of a swaggering bully mentality, and they were very poorly behaved because they obviously weren't from around there, and so there was a certain anonymity. I call it the cowardice of anonymity, that they knew they weren't going to be around, nobody would know who they were, and so they would be lewd towards my wife. They would, not for long, but they would start out that way until I would go and politely correct them. They would also be very aggressive and curse in front of people and their children, and of course they would be showing up in public drunk. So I have no illusions about the lack of character in some of the people that are going to show up in the national forest areas and the hunting areas. Here's why hunters are going to be a threat for me. Because hunters have guns, hunters know how to use them, and their plan A for preparedness, I've talked to many hunters about their preparedness stance, and some are actually preppers, and many, though, have too much confidence in their ability to go out and hunt and live off the land. It's unrealistic, it's not feasible, and it's not sustainable. If you will look at the history of hunter-gatherer tribes, they usually faded out and were supplanted by peoples that actually knew how to farm and to grow crops, because farming is 10 times more efficient use of the land, and it's much more easily sustained over a long period of time. You cannot sustain yourself long by hunter-gathering. It's just too risky a venture. So they believe that they're going to go out, throw all their guns in the back of their vehicle, drive out to their deer camp or their deer lease, and stay in their tent, or perhaps they have a mobile home or some camper trailer set up out there on the property. They'll take a little bit of water with them. There's no electricity for the most part on most of these deer camps because they're only there to go hunting. They're not there for comfort. And they're going to be there with their whole family. They're going to bring whatever groceries they've got and camping gear and such things. But after a short period of time, they're going to, and they'll do okay living on their little deer camp until they run out of food. Then they're going to have a problem. The amount of game that they think they're going to get isn't going to equal what they need to have. And so now you're going to have hunger. You're going to have the belly button introducing itself to the backbone. When that happens, especially when it's happening to your family, you'll start thinking about doing desperate things. That's when it gets very dangerous for the rest of us, because now you have these people that are in close proximity to you. They know how to hunt, they know how to camouflage and conceal themselves, they know how to move through the woods quietly, and they're armed. It's too easy, and I don't care how much of a high-speed death machine you are, how adept you are with your weapons and your tactics, how many sandbags you have up around your house. Somebody can sit in the woods in a diaper with a bolt-action rifle and shoot you out of the seat of your tractor and then come in and rob your family at will. And so that's why they're a problem, because they're going to be in close proximity to you. And they don't have a good plan, but they do have the capabilities to take you down. And they may be in small groups, and they may gather up more folks. They're also going to be a real problem for each other, quite frankly. They're going to be opportunizing one another because they're going to be set up with very little defensive capability. And you're going to see, I think, groups of hunters are going to band together. I've seen them do this during deer season. I remember a friend of mine was out hunting, and he got a deer, and but he didn't. It wasn't a kill. So he's following the blood trail, and it went on for almost a half a mile. And when he finally did catch up with the deer, there were 3 other hunters, and I guess it died. There were 3 hunters standing there over the deer, and he walked up. He said, "Hey," he said, "Hey, that's my deer." And they said, "Not anymore." And the implication, they were kind of leveling their weapons at him. The implication was clear. We have guns, we outnumber you, and so we're taking your deer. And this is not during WROL, folks. This is just regular, hunting season stuff going on. And I can attest that I saw that type of attitude and behavior, unfortunately, in far too many folks that were hunters. So I hate to throw hunters under the bus, and I'm not trying to throw all of you under there. If you're a good individual, good for you. Just drive on with what you're doing. But the rest of us need to be advised that you're not talking about that happy, nice, friendly hunter guy every time you see somebody in the orange vest walking around. They may be a criminal lurking underneath that thin exterior. All right, folks, that's been phase 1 or part 1. We're talking about hunters. The next time we come back, we're going to talk about the next phase, which is specific to those of you that live in the city. Okay, this has been Maine Prepper. Come back, please.